Tools for statistical analyses. So there are a number of tools for statistical analyses, more than we can even enumerate here. Some of the best ones are the program, the R, software and programming language. So the name of it is just the letter R. And that's both a software application and a programming language. There's Python and the related statistical libraries. When we're talking about statistical analysis tools and also similar software, often we have the main program and we also have additional libraries that need to be downloaded, or they're sometimes called add-ins and so on. So that's kind of important to remember. There's the program Tableau, there's Microsoft Excel, there's SPSS, there's SAS, and there's just a bunch of other ones. We're going to be using Microsoft Excel in this class, or you can also use similar spreadsheet software if they have the same functions. And if you're familiar with other programs, actually, you can also use them. But I'm going to be following Microsoft Excel because Microsoft Excel has a number of functions that are provided by default and therefore can enable us to do all sorts of interesting statistical analyses. So spreadsheet software, Microsoft Excel is a kind of spreadsheet software. There are other ones as well. Like I was saying, Google Sheets has their own, and there's the open source version called LibreOffice you can download. If you are a Wayne State student, you can download Microsoft Excel for free. So just make sure you get it. There are instructions on how to do that. Microsoft Excel has a user-friendly interface, and it's kind of intuitive and it's flexible. You can delete columns, open columns. You can, create, you can kind of create a table with some of the cells, or you can create another table with another of the cells over here in the same sheet. There are various statistical functions available. Before they used to be add-in, and you have to add something from the background and something else, but now you can just go to formulas and there's a bunch of functions over there that you can just plug in here, and so it's a beautiful thing. Multiple visualization features. So if you go to insert, you can add all sorts of graphs and histograms, pie charts, line graphs, and so on. So it's a very useful tool. Now it cannot handle very large data sets, like data sets with millions of records. So it's not good for that kind of big data analysis, but for smaller data, it's very useful. The data format of Microsoft Excel, the native one is .xls and also XLSX, but Microsoft can import other kinds of data as well, including the very common CSV. CSV stands for comma separated value format. It is a simple text file with numbers and text that identify each new line as a role of an individual. So you may see something like this. You can just open the CSV with a regular Notepad or simple text editor. And it's something like every line is a row, just like in the spreadsheet. And every row is an instance of whatever it is that you're measuring or capturing. And then if you see here, there's a sequence of attributes separated by the comma. So this is the first attribute, the second attribute, the third attribute, and then so on. There's only 3 attributes, and you can see that every line has 3 things. Now, there's no columns exactly because it's not about columns. It's just about the comma itself separate, like the name says, comma separated values. The order of attributes are established by the first line of the CSV or another accompanying file. So it doesn't say over here, but often the first line is always going to be different in the CSV because the first line are the names of the attributes themselves, which of course should correspond with the attributes that are listed in the data. So in this case, it looks like 3 attributes. Each CSV file is the same as a single table. Often, so it's just you just can really pack in one single table. If you have data on other things, you'll probably list them in another table. Rows of individuals, columns of attributes. Although you're not going to see a column very clearly in the CSV itself, you just open the actual text value. But just like in the table, all rows will refer to the same unit of analysis. So here I have a CSV of agencies on Twitter, and the level of the agency, whether state, federal, or local, and then their earliest post and then the latest post. And then it's just so each of these is an agency. Each of these is an agency, not because it's the first attribute, it's just because that's how it was conceived and that's how it was defined. So each row is an agency, and this attribute is the agency name, the level, earliest post, latest post. Here's just another instance with another program. So this is a Notepad++ program, which is better for opening a little bit larger data sets. Notepad might be a little bit too weak. Sometimes you need to, I don't know if you see here, but often in these more developed text editors, you see the line number. It's always good to have the line number because everything sort of goes about lines. So if you notice here, the second line begins here, not here. And that's because I didn't have the word rep. So I have wrapped the word. So this is actually the list of all the attributes of this one data set here, which is actually the B data set from the USDA. So the first thing is the ID, and then the institution code, and the collection code, and the basis of record, and the information withheld, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, you know, there's like the kingdom of the bee that they're talking about. And then after the first line are the actual values of the actual occurrences they're capturing. Notice sometimes there's a comma and there's a comma next to it. What does that mean? Well, that means this is a null value. That means it's an empty column, empty attribute over here. And I think I have here, if you just change the view so that it does not, the word does not wrap, it just keeps going, and then you have to like scroll over to see the rest. You can see that each new line is a new instance. To open and manipulate a CSV directly, it is usually best to not use basic Notepad from Windows or TextEdit for Macintosh for CSV manipulation. You should download or have either Sublime Text or Notepad or others. There are other ones, just basic sort of text editors for programming and a CSV manipulation. Also, you always want to remember to import your data and not double click on it with Excel. So if you have a CSV file, you download a CSV file with all the data and stuff, often your intuition would be to double click on it and open up with Excel, because your computer might already know that Excel opens up CSV, so you just double click on it. That's wrong, that's bad. Don't do that. Always import the data, and I'm going to show how to do that via the tutorial. CSV files, like any text file, is usually encoded by some standard. Encoding is the method of translating characters into machine language. So every basic text file has a kind of encoding that you need to be aware of. The most common encoding are ASCII for Western content, and the other one is UTF-8. So this is very common nowadays, and most data are encoded this way, but it's important to know how it is encoded so your program can translate the content into its right format. So when you actually import data with Excel, you're going to see something like this. You always should see something like this, and this is why importing is much better. So, and every time you import the data, you want to make sure you check over here. They call it file origin, but they should really call this encoding. All kinds of potential encodings, not just ASCII and UTF-8, but it usually says UTF-8. So you want to make sure you change it to the correct encoding, so all your variables, all your values come up correctly instead of like having funky characters. I don't know if you saw somewhere back then, I actually had some stuff here. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, here, when I was uploading this data, I didn't import correctly. I just double clicked on it, and you can see here how these characters are not correctly rendered. That's because I did not use the correct encoding, and then I did not properly import the data. So you got to be careful about that. Let's see, I might even have had that. Yeah, see, I have the file right there. Be careful with data encoding. Always formally upload or import your data instead of just double clicking on it. So I'm going to leave you with this message and see you next time.